At my wife's memorial service, my son-in-law stood up in front of everyone and announced that my auto repair shop was failing and he'd be taking over my finances to save me from bankruptcy. I didn't argue. I just nodded, thanked him quietly, and went back to fixing cars the next morning. What Marcus didn't know was that I own the building where his financial advisory firm operates, along with 2 other commercial properties in downtown Austin. The monthly rent he's been paying me for 3 years? $4,500. The shop he called failing grossed $680,000 last year. Sometimes the best response to disrespect is just letting someone dig their own hole. And Marcus was about to need a backhoe. I'm Robert Anderson, but everyone calls me Bob. I'm 64 years old, and I've been working on cars since I was 16. Started as a grease monkey at Eddie's Garage on South Congress, worked my way up to head mechanic, then opened my own place in 1989. Nothing fancy, just Anderson's Auto Repair, a 3-bay shop with good equipment and better reputation. My wife Linda and I ran it together for 32 years until lung cancer took her 4 months ago. The signs started at the hospital, actually. Marcus would visit Linda with our daughter Rachel, and I'd hear him in the hallway, talking to the doctors like he was in charge, discussing treatment options, asking about costs, making decisions. Linda was too weak to protest, and I was too focused on holding her hand to care who was playing general. But looking back, that's when it started. Marcus positioning himself as the decision maker, the one who understood complicated things that simple folks like us couldn't grasp. At the memorial service, we had about 70 people crammed into the community center. Linda was loved. She'd done the books for half the small businesses in our neighborhood, volunteered at the food bank, taught Sunday school for 15 years. People brought casseroles and stories and tears. It should have been about her. Instead, Marcus made it about me. During the reception, he tapped his wine glass like he was making a toast. Rachel looked confused. I was standing by the coffee station, still in my gray suit that Linda had bought me for our 40th anniversary. "Can I have everyone's attention?" Marcus called out. He was in a $2,000 suit, the kind with the sheen that screams expensive. His hair was perfect, that corporate side part with just enough gray at the temples to look distinguished. "I want to talk about Bob." The room went quiet. I set down my coffee. "These past few months have been incredibly difficult for our family," Marcus continued, his voice taking on that sympathetic tone he probably practiced. "And I know Bob has been focused on caring for Linda, which is exactly as it should be. But in doing so, the shop has suffered. Accounts receivable are a mess. Equipment repairs have been deferred, and frankly, the business is in trouble." I felt every eye in the room turn to me. Our neighbor, Tom Wilson, who'd known me since the Carter administration, frowned. Linda's sister Marie looked concerned. Even old Eddie, my first boss, seemed worried. "As someone who works in finance," Marcus said, and I could hear the pride in that phrase, "I've been reviewing Bob's situation, and I want everyone here to know that Rachel and I are stepping in. We're going to help Bob transition out of the business before things get worse. He's 64 years old. He should be enjoying retirement, not drowning in debt he doesn't understand." Drowning in debt. The words echoed through the community center like he'd announced I had 3 months to live. Rachel touched his arm, whispering something, but Marcus was on a roll. "I've already been in contact with a buyer. The shop, the equipment, everything. We should be able to get Bob enough to cover his basic needs, and maybe a small place in a senior community. It's time for the next generation to take responsibility." He said it like he was doing me a favor, like he was a hero for rescuing his helpless father-in-law from financial ruin at his wife's memorial service. I stood there with my coffee, watching him. He was waiting for gratitude, I realized, waiting for me to thank him in front of everyone for his generous intervention. "That's very thoughtful, Marcus," I said quietly. "We can talk about it." He smiled, satisfied. Rachel looked relieved, and I went back to the coffee station because Linda's best friend Betty was crying again and needed a napkin. But I remembered something Linda used to say. She'd lean over the shop's computer, squinting at the accounting software, and tell me, "Bob, you know what your problem is? You're so busy fixing cars, you forget to fix misunderstandings. She was right. I'd let Marcus's misunderstanding grow for 3 years now. Ever since he married Rachel and moved to Austin to open his financial advisory firm, Bennett Wealth Management, I'd let him assume things. Let him think the quiet old mechanic was exactly what he appeared to be. Time to fix that misunderstanding. The Monday after the memorial, Marcus showed up at the shop at 9 a.m. I was under a '08 Silverado, replacing the transmission pan gasket. My guys, Tommy and Deshawn, were working the other 2 bays. The radio was playing classic rock, and everything smelled like motor oil and coffee. "Bob, we need to talk." Marcus stood in the doorway in khakis and a polo shirt, trying to look casual but clearly uncomfortable in a place where people got their hands dirty. I rolled out from under the truck, wiping my hands on a rag. "Sure. Coffee? No, thanks." He looked around the shop like he was already appraising it for sale. "I've scheduled a meeting with a potential buyer for Friday. Guy named Daniels. Owns 4 Quick Lube franchises. He's interested in expanding into actual repair work." "Quick Lube franchises," I repeated. "It's a growing market. He's offering $175,000 for the business, which is honestly generous given the state of your books." I nodded slowly. Tommy, who was 28 and had worked for me since he dropped out of UT, had stopped working. He was listening, wrench in hand, face careful. "The property itself," Marcus continued, "that's more complicated. You're leasing from Westside Properties LLC, correct? I checked with the county. Your lease is up in 3 months. Daniels would negotiate his own lease, but you'd be free and clear." "Free and clear," I said. "Exactly. No more worrying about overhead, insurance, payroll. You could focus on your health, maybe take up golf." "Golf? I'd never played golf in my life." "What about Tommy and Deshawn?" I asked. Marcus glanced at them. "That's between them and the new owner. Not really your concern once the sale goes through." "Not my concern." These guys had been with me for years. Deshawn had 3 kids. Tommy was saving for a house. "I appreciate you thinking about this, Marcus. It's what family does," he said, and he meant it. That was the thing about Marcus. He genuinely believed he was helping, believed that a 64-year-old mechanic couldn't possibly understand business or money or anything more complicated than an oil change. "So Friday at noon," Marcus said. "My office. I'll have the preliminary paperwork ready. Just sign the letter of intent, and we can move forward." After he left, Tommy walked over. "Boss, you're not really selling, are you?" "What makes you think that?" "Because you spent 40 grand on new diagnostic equipment 6 months ago. And you just renewed our ASE certifications. And last month you were talking about expanding into electric vehicle repairs." "Smart kid." Linda always said Tommy had a good head on his shoulders. "Don't worry about it," I told him. "Just keep the bays running." But Tommy wasn't the only one worried. Word spread fast in our neighborhood. By Tuesday afternoon, I'd gotten calls from 3 regular customers asking if it was true I was selling. Mrs. Chen, whose Camry I'd been maintaining for 12 years, actually cried on the phone. Wednesday, Rachel came by. My daughter, 34 years old, looked like her mother. Same dark hair, same green eyes, same way of chewing her bottom lip when she was anxious. "Dad, I need to talk to you." She sat in the tiny office where Linda used to do the books, surrounded by parts, catalogs, and maintenance schedules. "About Marcus's plan?" I asked. "He means well, Dad. He really does." "I know. It's just, after Mom died, we were worried. You seem so lost. And the shop's fine, honey." "Is it, though?" She pulled out a folder, and I recognized Marcus's organized, color-coded style. "Marcus pulled your profit and loss statements. Last quarter was down 18%. You've got $43,000 in outstanding receivables. And your equipment loan, where did Marcus get my profit and loss statements?" She hesitated. "I gave him access to Mom's old computer files. He needed to assess the situation." He needed to assess the situation, my situation, without asking. "Rachel, did Marcus tell you about Westside Properties LLC? Your landlord?" "He said your lease is up soon. Do you know who owns Westside Properties?" She shook her head. "Did you know that Bennett Wealth Management leases their office space from West Side Properties? I don't understand. I know, honey. That's okay. I looked at her. This daughter, who'd been daddy's little girl once upon a time, who'd helped me rebuild a carburetor when she was 10, who'd married a man so different from her old man that it still surprised me sometimes. Let me ask you something. Do you trust Marcus? Of course. And do you trust me? Dad, that's not fair. It's a simple question. Yes, I trust you. But you're grieving. You're not thinking clearly about finances. Marcus is a professional. And I'm what? A grease monkey? I didn't say that. But she'd thought it. Or Marcus had taught her to think it. Thursday morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I put on a suit, not the gray one from the memorial, but the navy blue one Linda had insisted I buy 3 years ago for Rachel's wedding. I drove downtown, parked in the garage at the Austin Professional Building, and took the elevator to the 5th floor. Bennett Wealth Management occupied Suite 510. Glass doors, modern furniture, inspirational posters about financial freedom and early retirement. A receptionist in her 20s looked up from her computer. Can I help you? I'm here to see Marcus Bennett. Do you have an appointment? Tell him it's his father-in-law. 5 minutes later, Marcus emerged from his office, confused to see me in a suit. Bob? Is everything okay? Is it Rachel? Rachel's fine. I just wanted to see your office before our meeting tomorrow. He glanced at his receptionist, then gestured me back. His office was impressive. Corner suite, windows overlooking downtown, mahogany desk that probably cost more than my truck. Pictures of Rachel on the credenza, his various certifications on the wall. CFP, CFA, all the letters that meant he knew about money. This is a nice space, I said, looking around. Thanks. We've been here 3 years now. Great location, good foot traffic from the other businesses in the building. How much is the rent? $4,500 a month, which is reasonable for downtown. Why? Just curious. Who's your landlord? Some LLC. West Side Properties, I think. I deal with a property manager, not the owner. It's a corporate thing. I nodded, walking to the window. From here, you could see the Texas state capitol, the whole Austin skyline. You've done well for yourself, Marcus. I work hard. I can see that. I turned to face him. Can I ask you something? When you look at me, what do you see? He was caught off guard. What do you mean? I mean, when you look at me, who do you see? What do you think I am? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Bob, this feels like a trap. It's not. I'm genuinely asking. He thought about it. I see a good man, a hard worker, someone who's dedicated his life to his family and his business, but also someone who's in over his head. The world's changed, Bob. Cars are computers now. The shop needs to modernize. The books need proper management. You're still doing business like it's 1,989. And you think I can't adapt? I think you shouldn't have to. You've earned a rest. There it was. The kindness underneath the condescension. Marcus really did think he was helping. One more question, I said. Have you ever wondered why a guy who's supposedly broke drives a $65,000 truck? Marcus frowned. Your truck's worth $65,000? 2023 F. 450. Limited. Linda made me buy it last year. Said I'd been driving beaters my whole life. Time to treat myself. It's the one extravagance I allowed. That doesn't prove, or why I paid cash for Rachel's wedding. All $42,000 of it? You said that was from savings. It was. But you never asked how much savings. I could see his mind working, trying to reconcile the broke mechanic narrative with these details that didn't fit. Bob, what's going on? Friday at noon, I said, heading for the door. Your office. I'll be there for the meeting. With the buyer? With whoever you want to invite. But Marcus, you might want to have a lawyer present. I left him standing in his corner office, confusion and the first hint of doubt crossing his face. Friday arrived with Texas sunshine and the kind of heat that makes you grateful for air conditioning. I spent the morning at the shop, finishing the Silverado, checking in with Tommy and Deshawn, making sure everything was running smooth. At 11:30, I changed into my suit in the shop bathroom, much to Tommy's amusement. Boss, you look like you're going to court. Something like that. At noon, I walked into Bennett Wealth Management. The receptionist recognized me this time. Mr. Anderson, they're expecting you in the conference room. The conference room was all glass and chrome. Marcus sat at the head of the table with a lean, sharp-eyed man in his 50s I assumed was Daniels. Rachel was there too, looking anxious. And, surprisingly, two other people. A woman in a business suit with a briefcase and a younger man taking notes. Bob, glad you're here. Marcus stood. This is Jim Daniels, the potential buyer. And this is Sarah Chen, my attorney, and her associate Mark, his attorney. He'd brought a lawyer to what he thought was my surrender. Mr. Anderson. Daniels stood to shake my hand. I've heard good things about your shop. Built quite a reputation over the years. 35 years, I said. Marcus tells me you're looking to retire. Marcus tells everyone a lot of things. The room went quiet. Rachel's eyes widened. Marcus cleared his throat. Bob, maybe we should... Before we start, I said, setting my own briefcase on the table, I'd like to introduce my attorney. On cue, the conference room door opened. Patricia Morales walked in, late 50s, gray suit, carrying a litigation bag that meant business. I'd known Patricia for 20 years. She'd handled Linda's will, the shop's incorporation, everything legal in my life. Patricia, Marcus said, standing, I didn't know you'd be joining us. Mr. Anderson retained me 3 days ago. I'm here to represent his interests. She took the seat next to me and pulled out files with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Bob, this really isn't necessary, Marcus started. We're family. We're just trying to help. Help me what? I asked, my voice calm. Help me avoid bankruptcy? Help me understand my own finances? Help me see that I'm too old and too dumb to run my own business? I never said you were dumb. No. You said I didn't understand modern business, that I was drowning in debt, that my shop was failing. I looked at Daniels. Tell me, Mr. Daniels, what exactly did Marcus tell you about Anderson's auto repair? Daniels glanced at Marcus, uncomfortable, that it was a distressed sale. Aging owner, outdated equipment, declining revenue, motivated seller. Motivated by what? By necessity, I assumed. Mr. Daniels, Patricia said, pulling out a document. This is Anderson's Auto Repair's most recent financial statement, prepared by Mitchell & Associates, a certified accounting firm. Would you like to review it? She slid it across the table. Daniels picked it up, and I watched his expression change as he read. Your gross revenue last year was $680,000? $683,000. I corrected. Good year. With a net profit margin of 22%? Linda always said if you're not making 20%, you're doing something wrong. Daniels looked at Marcus. You told me this was a failing business. The last quarter was down, Marcus said quickly. The outstanding receivables are $43,000, I finished, on an annual revenue of $683,000. That's a 6% AR ratio. Industry average is 8-12%. My collection rate is actually better than most. Marcus's face was red. Bob, you're cherry-picking numbers. Am I? Patricia pulled out another document. This is the appraisal of Anderson's auto repair, conducted last month. The business, including equipment, inventory, customer base, and goodwill, is valued at $425,000. The property itself, he doesn't own the property, Marcus interrupted. He leases from Westside Properties, LLC. I checked the county records. You're right, I said. I do lease from Westside Properties. Have for 35 years. Very reasonable terms. Then what's the point of all this? Marcus demanded. You're still facing a lease renewal in 3 months. The new owner would have to negotiate. Tell me, Marcus, I said. When was the last time you looked at the actual ownership documents of Westside Properties, LLC? He froze. The LLC was formed in 1989, I continued. Same year I opened the shop. The registered agent is Patricia Morales. I nodded toward my attorney. The operating agreement lists 1 member. Would you like to guess who? I watched understanding dawn on his face like sunrise. Horror followed close behind. Westside Properties owns the building where Anderson's auto repair operates, Patricia said, pulling out another document. It also owns the Austin Professional Building at 517 Congress Avenue. The building where we're currently sitting. The building where Bennett Wealth Management leases Suite 510 for $4,500 per month. No, Marcus whispered. It also owns a third property, I continued. A small retail strip on East Riverside. Total property value, according to current appraisal, is $1.8 million. Net monthly rental income is $13,000. The room was silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning. But that's impossible, Marcus said. You're a mechanic. You live in the same house you've lived in for 30 years. You drive okay. You drive a nice truck. But you can't own 3 commercial properties. Why not? I asked. Because mechanics can't understand real estate? Because someone who wears coveralls to work can't grasp investment strategy? Rachel had her hand over her mouth. Daniels was staring at the financial statements like they might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Marcus's attorney, Sarah, was scribbling notes with the desperate energy of someone realizing her client had stepped into something very deep. Linda and I bought this building in 1995, I said. Austin was growing, property was relatively cheap, and we had some money saved. The Austin Professional Building came in 2001, the strip mall in 2008, during the recession, when everything was on sale. Nothing fancy, just smart, patient investing. Why didn't you tell anyone? Rachel asked, her voice small. Tell them what? That I own things? Honey, people don't usually announce their net worth. Your mother and I lived simply because we liked living simply. The satisfaction isn't in showing off. It's in knowing you're secure. Marcus slumped in his chair. I was trying to help. I know, I said, and I meant it. That's the really sad part. You genuinely believed I needed saving. You saw an old man in coveralls and assumed broke. Saw someone who didn't brag about money and assumed they didn't have any. Mr. Anderson, Daniels said, standing. I apologize for wasting your time. I was clearly given incorrect information. He shot Marcus a look that promised a very uncomfortable conversation later. I'll show myself out. After he left, it was just us. Family and lawyers and the wreckage of assumptions. Marcus, I said, you've been paying me $4,500 in rent every month for 3 years. Did you ever once wonder where a supposedly broke mechanic got the money to live? I thought Rachel was helping you. I thought you were helping him, Rachel said. Nobody helped me except Linda, I said. And we helped ourselves by working hard, spending smart, and investing patient. Your mother did the books for 20 local businesses. You think she didn't learn things? She was brilliant with money. We just didn't feel the need to advertise it. So what now? Marcus asked. And for the first time since I'd known him, he sounded uncertain. The confident financial advisor was gone, replaced by a man realizing he'd profoundly misjudged his father-in-law. Now you learn a lesson, I said. The same lesson I learned when I was young and thought I knew everything. Respect doesn't come from titles or degrees or expensive suits. It comes from recognizing that you don't know everything about everyone. That quiet doesn't mean ignorant. That humble doesn't mean helpless. Are you going to evict me? He asked. From the office? I thought about it. That depends. Are you going to keep trying to sell my business out from under me? No. Are you going to treat me like a charity case who can't manage his own affairs? No. Then we're good. Pay your rent on time, don't insult my intelligence, and we'll get along fine. He nodded, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Rachel, I said, turning to my daughter, you want to know the real reason I didn't fight back when Marcus announced his plan at the memorial? Why? Because I knew he'd dig himself deeper. And sometimes the best teacher is natural consequences. Marcus just learned that assumptions are expensive. You just learned that your dad isn't as simple as you thought. And maybe both of you learned that family means trusting people even when they don't perform their competence in ways you recognize. Patricia started packing up her files. I think we're done here. One more thing, I said. I pulled out a folder I'd been saving. Marcus, you're right that the shop needs to modernize. So I'm upgrading to a 5-bay facility with electric vehicle charging stations and advanced diagnostic equipment. Construction starts next month. The new location is 3 blocks from here. I'm expanding the business, not closing it. I slid a document across to him. This is a commercial property listing. It's the building I'm buying for the expansion. You're welcome to finance the mortgage if you want. Standard commercial rates. Show me you're good at your job, and we can work together. Show me disrespect again, and I'll take my business elsewhere. He looked at the listing. $1.2 million purchase price. You're serious? Dead serious. Tommy's going to manage the original shop. Deshawn's going to run the new location, and I'm going to finally take that vacation Linda always wanted. Maybe Italy, maybe Alaska. Haven't decided yet. You're not retiring? Son, I'm 64 years old. I've got another decade of good work in me at least. Why would I retire when I'm having fun? A week later, I was under a Subaru, replacing the catalytic converter, when Tommy rolled his creeper next to mine. Boss, Marcus is here. I slid out. Marcus was standing in the shop entrance, looking nervous. He'd traded his usual polished appearance for jeans and a work shirt. Can we talk? He asked. We walked to the office. I poured us both coffee from the ancient Mr. Coffee that Linda used to threaten to replace. I've been thinking all week, Marcus said, about what you said, about assumptions. And you're right. I looked at you and saw what I expected to see. A mechanic, therefore limited. Old, therefore behind the times. Quiet, therefore unsophisticated. And now? Now I see someone who's been playing chess while I was playing checkers. He sipped the terrible coffee without complaint. I talked to Rachel. She told me stories I'd never heard. About how you and Linda lived through 3 recessions. How you saved every extra dollar. How you taught yourself real estate law from library books because you couldn't afford an attorney when you bought your first property. Linda taught herself. I corrected. I just tagged along. That's another thing. You give her credit for everything. Because she deserved it. I fixed cars. She built wealth. Partnership means recognizing who's good at what. Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching Tommy and Deshawn work. I'm sorry, Bob. Not just for the meeting or the assumptions. For the memorial. For announcing all that in front of everyone. For embarrassing you. You didn't embarrass me. You embarrassed yourself. There's a difference. I want to make it right. Then do your job well. Finance the new property purchase. Give me good rates, good service, good advice. Treat me like a client who deserves respect, not a charity case who needs saving. Deal. He stood to shake my hand. And Bob, thank you. For what? For not evicting me. For not destroying my reputation. For teaching me a lesson without destroying me in the process. I thought about that. Marcus, I'm going to tell you what Linda told me on our first anniversary. She said, Bob, being right isn't the same as being kind. Sometimes you can win an argument and lose a relationship. Smart people know when to do which. She was a wise woman. The wisest. That's why I spent 40 years listening to her. After Marcus left, I went back to the Subaru. But Tommy stopped me. Boss, can I ask you something? Shoot. Why do you still do this? Fix cars, I mean. You could hire someone, sit in an office, manage the money. I picked up my wrench, feeling the familiar weight. You know what the best part of this job is? What? When someone brings me a car that doesn't work, and I fix it, and they drive away happy. There's something honest about that, something real. The car doesn't care if I'm rich or poor, educated or not. It only cares if I know what I'm doing. So you do it for the satisfaction. I do it because it's who I am. Money doesn't change that. Success doesn't change that. I'm a mechanic who happens to own some buildings, not a real estate investor who used to fix cars. Tommy nodded slowly. That's pretty cool, boss. What's cool about it? That you know who you are. That you don't need to prove anything to anybody. I thought about that as I slid back under the Subaru. He was right. In a way, I did know who I was. Took me 64 years to get comfortable with it, but I knew. And that comfort, that certainty of self, was worth more than any amount of money Marcus's spreadsheets could calculate. 3 months later, Rachel and Marcus came over for Sunday dinner. I'd started cooking again, something I hadn't done much since Linda passed. Nothing fancy, just pot roast and vegetables like my mother used to make. Over dinner, Rachel asked about the Italy trip. Postponed, I said. Too much going on with the new shop. Dad, you promised yourself that vacation. I will, just not yet. I looked at her, really looked at her. She had her mother's hands, I noticed. Same long fingers, same way of gesturing when she talked. Your mom and I always said we'd travel someday. Someday became never. Don't wait for someday, honey. That's the lesson. We're thinking about taking a trip, Marcus offered. Tuscany, maybe. Rachel's never been. You should go. I meant it. After dinner, Marcus helped me with the dishes while Rachel dug through old photo albums in the living room. Bob, can I ask you something personal? Marcus said, scrubbing a pot. Depends how personal. When did you know? About the memorial. About what I was planning. When did you decide to let me go ahead with it? I thought back to that day, standing by the coffee station while Marcus announced his plans to save me. About 3 seconds in, soon as you said drowning in debt, that's when I knew you had no idea what you were talking about, and you just let me keep going. Sometimes people need to finish their own sentences, interrupt them, and they never learn what they were about to say. He dried the pot, considering that. I told my business partner what happened. He said I was lucky you were understanding. What did you say? That understanding isn't the same as weak. That mercy and power aren't opposites. He set down the pot. He's retiring next year. Asked if I wanted to buy his share of the firm. That's a big decision. I wanted to ask your advice. About the financing, the valuation, the structure. This was new, Marcus asking my advice. Treating me like someone who might know something useful. Happy to help, I said. But full disclosure, I don't know much about financial services, cars and buildings. That's my expertise. But you know about building something that lasts, about patience and strategy, about not getting too big too fast. He looked at me directly. That's what I need advice on, not spreadsheets. Anyone can run the numbers. I need wisdom. Wisdom. From the grease monkey? Then let's talk about it, I said. But not tonight. Come by the shop Monday morning, 7 a.m. I'll show you something. Monday morning, Marcus showed up at 7, looking puzzled when I handed him coveralls. What are these for? You want to learn how I think? Then spend a day doing what I do. He looked at the coveralls like I'd handed him a snake. I'm a financial advisor, Bob. I don't know anything about cars. Exactly. So today you learn. Put them on. For the next 8 hours, Marcus worked alongside me. I taught him how to change brake pads, check transmission fluid, diagnose a misfire. He got his hands dirty, literally, made mistakes, asked questions, learned to use tools he'd never touched. At lunch, we sat in the office eating sandwiches. You know what's interesting? Marcus said, studying his oil-stained hands. This is harder than I thought. What is? Physical work. Remembering which wrench is which. Following the sequence. One mistake, and the whole job has to be redone. Now you're getting it. Getting what? Every job has its complexity. Just because you understand one thing doesn't mean you understand everything. I can rebuild an engine, but I'd be lost trying to structure a portfolio. Different kinds of intelligence, different kinds of skill. He nodded slowly. So when I assumed you didn't understand business because you're a mechanic, you were making the same mistake people make about you. Thinking that because you're young or wear a suit or talk about money, you can't possibly understand cars. It's all assumption, all prejudice dressed up as expertise. That's what you wanted me to learn today. That and how to change brake pads. Useful skill to have. He laughed, and it was real. Not the polished, professional laugh, but something genuine. You know what, Bob? You're a lot smarter than I gave you credit for. And you're a lot less arrogant than you were 3 months ago. We're both making progress. A year later, I was in Tuscany after all, standing in a villa overlooking the hills, holding a glass of wine I couldn't pronounce. Rachel and Marcus had insisted on paying for the trip, their way of making amends. And I'd accepted, because Linda always said accepting gifts was important too. My phone buzzed. Text from Tommy. New shop is killing it. We're booked 2 weeks out. Deshawn says hi. When you coming back? I smiled and pocketed the phone. Soon enough, but not yet. In my wallet, I carried a photo of Linda. Taken 20 years ago at the shop, her laughing at something I'd said, covered in grease stains and absolutely beautiful. On the back, in her handwriting, "Bob, you old fool, stop working and come to bed." I missed her every day, but I was learning something she'd tried to teach me for 40 years. That life wasn't just about work and security and building things. It was about relationships and respect and recognizing your own worth without needing to prove it to anyone. Marcus had learned that respect isn't inherited. You don't get it from your title or your education or your age. You earn it by recognizing the value in others, by treating people with dignity regardless of how they look or what they do. And me? I'd learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay quiet. Let people reveal themselves. Let assumptions collapse under their own weight. Let respect grow naturally from truth instead of forcing it through confrontation. That's what Linda would have wanted. Not revenge or humiliation or destroying Marcus's career. Just teaching. Just helping him see what he'd been too blind to notice. I raised my glass to the Tuscan sunset, to Linda, to quiet strength and patient wisdom. Sometimes the best response to disrespect is simply proving that the quiet ones are usually the ones who've already won. They just haven't needed to announce it yet.